I wanted to switch gears here, DB, because we're getting pretty close to draft time for the NBA. Well, we're getting close to combine time for the NFL, and we're getting all these mock drafts and things like that. And then I see Cam Ward out here telling people, "Hey, I'm keeping receipts if you don't draft me. I'm gonna remember."
Yeah.
Now, my question here is, don't you have to be a certain level of quality to make those kind of statements?
No.
Okay,
Mm-mm. You know why?
talk me out of it.
Because it's not for you to rank their value.
Okay,
It's how they view themselves.
I get that.
So you need a certain amount. I mean, at what point would you have told Brady to not think the way that he did?
Sure.
Right? So that's a guy that wasn't going to be drafted high,
Mm-hmm.
but was very outspoken
Mm-hmm.
about.
Guys that got drafted ahead of
Yeah.
him.
So I mean, I don't.
It wasn't a big Giovanni Carmazzi guy.
Wow, that's a heck of a pull.
You know why I know that?
Why?
Who was he drafted by?
Yeah, that's right, Niner. Which, by the way,
Where was he? Hofstra?
I'm fed up with it.
Yeah.
And I told you they were talking about Dak getting too much attention.
Yeah.
Pat, the producer, was making the case that Purdy should be more talked about than Prescott. Not so much more than as that he's better than people give him credit for.
Oh, 100%.
I thought that was interesting. I wasn't going to tell you to make you feel better because
No,
you got off to such a slow start with the black don't crack and the Asian joke, but
wasn't a joke. I was trying to give context to
it's not cool.
something. I do think I do think Brock Purdy is weirdly polarizing, though.
Yeah, but I'm not mad at Cam Ward for thinking that. I think everybody has their own. I mean, look who you're talking to, first of all. Like, I can make anything competitive.
Sure.
Anything. So
maybe it's so maybe
it just depends on what I want to move, what I think can move me.
So why it struck me weird is I think some of that I like to be internal.
I don't not have people tell you.
Or I don't need to hear it from sometimes I think it's more powerful to the person when it's like, hey, I let that burn quiet.
Yeah.
So maybe that's part of it. The other thing is, and I think it's because of it's a draft situation as opposed to being in the league already, where I got kind of Johnny Manziel vibes from it, where you get the story about him calling teams being like, let's go wreck the league together and stuff. And I wasn't sure Johnny Manziel was that guy. I don't know if Cam Ward is that guy. So I don't know if that's part of it. It just associated weirdly in my head, but it just struck me very oddly.
I think it's a little overstated, primarily because I don't want to judge that for somebody. I've seen a lot of petty work.
Sure.
Now, I don't know how long you can sustain negative energy for a positive outcome.
Fair.
And I think that's something different than what I have said it.
Okay.
Because I'm definitely separating those two. I'm a big.
Because you're going to let it burn quiet.
Yeah. And I'm a big just because you can doesn't mean you should guy. I'm always weighing that. There are lots of things that I think.
So you don't
I want to do.
You don't care that he said it, but you probably wouldn't have.
Correct. And I can make that distinction.
That's fair.
I would not have said that.
Maybe that's what I'm doing.
But I don't. I would think it.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely would think it.
Because and maybe this makes me a front runner, but
trust me, you don't want to be that.
I know
those guys suck.
But maybe because I am a guy that will take a victory lap for sure.
Yeah.
But I also I don't know. I don't know if it's because I do feel like I put myself out there a decent amount, and that's why I want to take the victory lap, because I take, you take some slings and arrows when you put yourself out there and people don't agree with you.
And I always say I'll take a victory lap, and I almost never do.
Yeah, you almost never do. I would take way more victory laps if I were you.
If you know how bad I want to I don't know. I mean, I sit on it.
Yeah.
Right.
But
I like internal victory laps.
Yeah. And I'll take them, I'll take them publicly because that's how I'm wired, and I'm kind of an a-hole like that. But I don't know. I don't know what it is about at this point in the process. if he's trying to convince teams to draft him. Like, I don't know what it was about it. It just struck me really strangely.
Well, I think it's because you don't like him. You've been one of those guys that all year that's kind of been a yeah but on Ward, right?
Yeah, there's something about it aesthetically that I just doesn't.
I get it.
I don't have a good reason. I really don't. And I wanted him at Florida State, to be clear.
But
my alternative was
who were
DJU,
they playing on television the night that we played Central?
Oh.
And it was like he had to have like this miraculous catch, no catch thing.
Who was they? Virginia Tech?
Yeah, maybe.
It was Virginia Tech because that's the one that was the big controversial ending.
Right. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm watching.
And I think that was a Thursday too.
I'm watching. Oh, it was a Friday.
Thursday. It might have been Friday.
Yeah.
It was a weird. It wasn't a Saturday.
Yeah,
like, it was a weird.
It was a
yeah.
Friday night.
Yeah.
And I'm watching that game, and there were several like that. We're in those close games, and they were playing down the stretch. I'm like, golly, I know you guys are poking holes at Miami and the way that they win close and getting breaks and stuff, but you certainly weren't getting that life without Cam Ward in it.
Sure.
So I always had to kind of, because there's lots of guys that don't fit my eye aesthetically that are highly productive.
Sure.
So, when I look at a guy like Ward, and I know he's polarizing, for me, Ward is different than Shedeur. Like,
they're very different styles.
I've seen Shedeur. I know his real size. I kind of know like his style of play, holding the ball versus not holding the ball. He had elite weapons, and he's going to have those at the NFL level too.
Yeah.
So they're just not going to be
that much better than the opponent.
Yeah. So, because that's the part people don't.
The gap isn't going to be the same.
Yeah, to be very comparable.
Yeah.
So if I was choosing between the two, I definitely would take Ward over Sanders, but that doesn't mean I would take either one of them as a
top 2-3 pick
as pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
But I like Ward more than most physically. There are some things. The whole sitting, like, go back and check out the situation. Do as much digging as you can. This is something that Austin would do. He's probably already typing. All right, what's he going to say? Because that dude will fact find
on
in a second.
Yeah.
The whole the mysterious thing about playing the first year at Houston and then sitting out and redshirting and then leaving and picking a school. There's some things about his personality that I'm not sure are going to play well unless I'm misdiagnosing it. But I'm not ready to throw in the towel and say, well, guys don't mature and can't change. But he has some telltale signs of being the face of a franchise that I'm not sure I would love.
More concern about that part of it with him or with Shedeur? Because Shedeur's got some of those questions too, right?
Shedeur is kind of the opposite. He's never not really been the man, and it's never not really been about him. And I don't think he's that kind of quarterback in the league. So when he's talking and they have a microphone in front of his face as a first-round draft pick, to be other-centered enough and to talk about your team enough and any potential help that you have gotten during the course of that game and stuff like that will be new for him.
Yeah.
Because it's always been about him. So that's a different kind of leadership and responsibility. Yeah, and responsibility.
Yeah.
So I think they both have questions in that regard, but just on opposite ends of the spectrum.
Sure. Yeah, and I don't really know. I mean, I said this yesterday. Someone's going to talk themselves into one of those guys.
100%.
Probably in the top 3.
100%.
And I don't know. I don't think either one of those are top 3 guys. But I also, we were talking about Travis Hunter. I'm like, you can't draft that guy number 1. You can't. You can't draft Travis Hunter number 1 and think you're going to be a better franchise for it. Like top 5, maybe if you're in a situation where you like some of your other pieces. But if you're Tennessee and you need a lot of help, you can't draft Travis Hunter number 1. But I wouldn't feel great if they decide, hey, we need a quarterback. Let's get one of these guys.
Is Travis Hunter a better defensive back than Will Johnson?
I don't think so.
I mean,
I don't think he's the best defensive back in the class. I don't think he's the best receiver in the class.
So maybe it was Ryan that explained it best. because I had that question, right? If you're not the top wideout
Yeah.
and you're not the top DB, what is the?
He said the margin for error, right?
Yep.
Is that if it doesn't work out at one spot, you still have another skill set to
The
fall back on.
margin of error where that pick occurs. And I guess I would listen to that. I just don't. I wouldn't sit here and tell you that I understand it.
Yeah, I worry about a pretty good at a lot of things, not great at anything.
And just
and at the number one pick, I don't feel good there.
Yeah.
Like I honestly, I would feel better if I as an organization and like went through combines or pro days or individual whatever, and you got the good size of the quarterbacks, you got a good look at them, you got a feel for one of these guys, and you go, hey, I know this is a risk, but that's a risk that makes more sense to me than Travis Hunter. Like if you think Cam Ward can replicate what he did at Miami and carry a team that way, that's a better risk.
Well,
in my opinion.
Do you think when folks are drafting, because you assume at the top and in the first round, guys, you're hoping they get to a second contract?
Yeah.
What about look aheads to re-signing guys for second contracts as a DB versus a quarterback?
Maybe. I mean, maybe you think you're so far off as a franchise that you're like, by the time I have to pay Cam Ward, even if it does work out, that I'm not going to be any good still.
Or go the other way, re-signing a DB in his fourth year,
$15 million.
Yeah,
somewhere in that. Even if he's
a little more than that, but yeah,
if he's the best cornerback in the league, like 20.
Yeah,
like you're not
versus.
I mean, by then,
whatever the market will be for quarterbacks.
Yeah, 40 a minimum.
Yeah, because we're already seeing like what the Chiefs may have to do with Mahomes.
Yeah, restructure and figure that out.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a restructure as much as because he's going to bump to $66 million.
Yeah.
So
they're going to try and convert some of that to bonus so it doesn't
and guaranteed money.
It doesn't count against the cap.
Now the problem is they'll have to do it again in 2026 when he's like $78 million.
Yeah. But it's something
you can keep kicking the can down the road a little bit, but I do think the ability to re-sign a guy for a second contract are what some good front offices think about. Maybe I'm giving them too much credit, but I would, because you have to think longer than a 1 year or a 2 year plan.
For sure.
And guys that are drafted at that spot don't get the fifth year.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to, it happens. It sneak up on you quick.
I do think, though, you have to worry about.
I mean, are you saying to yourself, is this going to be a $58 million guy?
Sure.
I think you have to.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. But I think you also have to say, okay, even if this works out, I've got the number one pick in the draft. Even if this works out, am I winning any more games? Like, even if Travis Hunter's a really good corner.
I don't know if you can think like that.
Don't you have to, though?
No, because so what was stopping Washington?
The Commanders?
Yeah.
From what? Stopping them from what?
From thinking, how many more games are we going to win?
Well, they went and got James Daniels, though.
Yeah, I understand that.
Like,
but that I don't.
The ceiling on a quarterback working out versus the ceiling on a corner working out are very different.
But do you cap yourself?
I think you have to be realistic about the positional impact. Like the impact of a really good corner is just less.
Yeah.
Like if you're telling me, hey, we're going to go Abdul Carter because we think the impact of an edge rusher is better than the impact of a corner and we're not sold on the quarterbacks, I'll hear that. I'll hear that about Abdul Carter, and you're thinking about a second contract, and do I want to pay Cam Ward or Shadeur Sanders $60 million a year 4 years from now? Or God knows, probably more than that. Mm-hmm. Like, let's be honest, the $60 million might be low 4 years from now. But if you go, hey, positionally, an edge rusher, I'm closer to a contract of a corner than I am a quarterback at that point. The best edge rushers make like $28-30 million right now. So that's half of what a quarterback makes. And impact-wise, I get way more bang for my buck as an edge rusher than I do from a corner. Yeah. Like, I'll have that conversation, but I just think and listen, I get having good defensive backs is important, right? But I think the positional impact of a corner, the upside just is not there at number one. Mm-hmm. Like, I just can't, especially if you're bad.
No, and I understand. And
Tennessee's bad. I mean,
And there's posting similarities to my man Game Dog, but I'm going to entertain this just because.
For Tommy?
So I'm going to go with Tommy here. Just Tommy, for lack of a better name. Shedeur is an all-time again, we're getting stats, right, as opposed to listening to what I actually said. Shedeur is an all-time NCAA leader in completion percentage. Okay. He has a 5-to-1 touchdown interception ratio. Okay. Stuff I can Google. Shedeur had probably the worst offensive line in Power 4. I'll even grant you that. I'd go Shedeur over Ward all day. What I said was physically, I would take Cam Ward, arm talent, mobility, whatever.
Productivity's been great.
Operating under duress. Also, it's not necessarily and maybe this is just his opinion and not adversarial to what was being said. There will be a great debate over those two, and maybe this is his reason for taking Shedeur. So I'm going to operate under that assumption. Like this is, but what I would say about that is Shedeur takes a ton of sacks. A reason he doesn't throw a ton of interceptions is because he won't take a ton of chances. So the anticipation of throwing guys open. Also, if you watch Shedeur, their ability to win 50 between Horn and Lester Buckets and Hunter, they won a lot of contested balls. Not sure you're going to make a living doing that in the NFL. So the anticipation and getting rid of the ball and standing in the face of duress is definitely something that I think Shedeur has to work on. It's not just the linear statistics of 5-1 and a bad offensive line. And
at the same time, I would argue Cam Ward probably needs to do better about operating within system.
Yeah. So what I think it's going to boil down to is kind of the part that I was talking about mainly, not their individual prowesses, how they operate as technicians physically. It's the face of the franchise thing. Because when you're giving the keys to somebody to be the face of your franchise, all other things other than just playing the position are going to matter.
Well,
they just are.
It was the concern about Caleb Williams in Chicago, right?
So you just have to understand. Yeah, and for a guy that's that talented,
for there to be any
questions, like clearly it's important,
right?
So it's not just hard data.
Because if you're looking on the field and physically, there would be no questions about Caleb Williams, right?
But I'm in training camp, Tommy, and my guys got to talk about how the practice went or what you need to do to get better or whatever. Like, you have to think about that too. How's this guy going to react? How's this guy going to represent my deal? And listen, I'll listen to this, right? I don't put a ton of stock in arm talent as far as arm strength. Again, you could have stopped right there. I don't need the Jeff George thing because you can anytime your debate style is this and you give me the specific examples, I'm going to tell you it doesn't matter. Because for every Jeff George or a guy that can rip it, I'll say, like, there's a Sam Darnold or there's an Aaron Rodgers. Or, yeah, we can talk about anticipation, and it works for some and not for others. But if you don't have arm talent, you better be good at getting the ball out of your hands and anticipating and throwing guys open. I think we can safely agree about that. That's something I think Shedeur is going to have to show in his workouts. Throwing guys open and anticipation. It's going to be a thing. If I were him, I would roll some tape where he was really good and he took a ton of sacks and it almost cost him. Nebraska 2 years ago in Colorado hit some of those early throws he made, the scramble in the back of the end zone where he led a guy about 8 yards, the big over route that they threw behind Nebraska, and we're like, how does that happen in between two defenders? Look at the trajectory of where he threw that ball. Now, if he could do those kinds of things, sure, you don't have to talk about arm talent, but if you don't, again, here's the one-off. I could do this all day. Tom Brady, okay. Yeah, Tom Brady does have arm talent, and it's better than he's given credit for.
Also,
but one of the things that makes Brady really good is his anticipation. So you can't give me the best of the best and then the worst of the worst and expect me to be like, oh, okay, good point. Like, we could do this all day.
Also, arm talent and arm strength are different things.
No,
I'm just saying, like, that's kind of what it seems like Tommy's getting at here. I just want to make that distinction. Arm strength and arm talent are very different things.
I'm with you.
Jamarcus Russell had a great arm. He didn't have a ton of arm talent.
I understand.
Like Matthew Stafford is kind of your, like, hey, I've got
the
both.
best of both worlds.
Yeah, Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers are like, hey, I've got great arm strength and great arm talent. But like Tom Brady and Joe Montana had incredible arm talent. They didn't have great arm strength.
We're talking about elite guys.
Yeah, at the top end, right? And so, like, that's a big difference here. Because I would argue that Shedeur does have arm talent even if he doesn't have a great arm strength.
Yeah,
right.
I would be more apt to agree with that.
Like, I think that's true.
I would be more apt to agree with
Now,
that.
does he need to work on some of the other things, their timing, anticipation, like standing in front of a rush, those types of things? 100%. But, like, that doesn't mean he doesn't have arm talent. And if you don't have a base level of arm talent, nothing else matters. Like, you have to, it's kind of like what we were talking about a couple days ago with Coach Rule. Like, if you don't get to the base level of talent, the rest of it doesn't matter. And so, yes, we can debate how much the other stuff matters, but look at the guys that Tommy brought up. Joe Montana, one of the great leaders in the game we've ever seen. Tom Brady, one of the great leaders in the game we've ever seen.
And I would make the case every day that ends in Y that Joe Montana had elite. I won't say elite. Is the perfect example of arm talent
over arm
versus
strength.
arm strength.
100%. I mean, I'd throw Brock Purdy in that conversation. Good arm talent, mediocre arm strength. Like that guy will put. And then here's another great example. Trevor Lawrence, great arm strength, great arm talent, doesn't have a lot of the other stuff, it seems like, and has struggled because of it, right? And I think a lot of people will sit here and ask, well, DB, why does it matter what kind of press conference they give in training camp and things like that?
Oh,
and here's the reason. Right?
Do you think people would ask that?
I do. Because I think some people think that stuff is just fluff and doesn't matter.
Okay.
But, and you're right, like the press conference itself or the sound clips themselves don't matter, but it's the way he's received in the locker room and by the other guys, right? Because what's the best thing a quarterback can do? It's get everybody pulling in the same direction. You say it all the time. Hey, if I've got a quarterback that can lead other good players, I'm good, right? Who you talk about? You talk about Rizak all the time with your Westside team and leading a bunch of other D1 guys. And he was the lightest recruited of those D1 guys. And then you talk about Tommy Frazier, who you've got a bunch of guys that played in the NFL, and Tommy, who didn't play in the NFL, right? But who was able to lead all those super talented guys? Tommy Frazier was, right? That's the difference between a guy who, in Tommy and Brooke, and why they ended up really being a clear choice there for those teams in Nebraska. Like, that's the thing here. That's why the press conference matters, right? That's why the sound clip matters.
And it's just interesting. You know, you look at guys and kind of their history or their MO, and I use a guy like Josh Allen, big Josh Allen, right? You know, coming from Wyoming and came in with the questions and the accuracy. That's a guy. Not everybody can handle taking it on the chin to Mahomes every year when you basically stand toe to toe with that guy.
Yeah, there's how much more could Josh Allen have
But
done?
I'm comfortable with him as the spokesperson. You right now, what you need from Josh Allen is not more physical attributes. You need more of his competitive wherewithal and the ability to lead, because you have to hang in there if you're Buffalo.
100%.
Right?
You need some resilience.
Why will Caleb Williams have the pressure this year in Chicago? It's not going to be because of his physical prowess. It's can he hang in there when they cram a microphone in front of his face?
And when Chicago's struggling and going through a tough spot.
That stuff is going to matter. Part of Jaden Daniels' allure is handling
He's cool as
the media.
Just always cool.
Part of Jalen Hurts' allure is handling
unbothered.
He just is not flappable.
He's unbothered.
That stuff matters.
And let's get away from the notion. Like, I understand Shedeur is the most accurate pass. He had the best completion percentage in NCAA history. That doesn't mean he was the most accurate.
Just
completion percentage and accuracy are not the same thing.